Welcome, Amy Barney here. So what is autism? I felt a little embarrassed when my sister asked me in Texas to explain what exactly it is. And I was like, like I didn't know how to articulate it. It was, I know exactly what we experience. I know what we go through with my son, but to explain it in a general way to somebody else. And I thought, I should know this. We've been dealing with this for 2.5 years now. I should know how to explain and simplify this. But I didn't. I didn't know how to explain it. And so I looked it up. I went to Google, did a little search because Google's, like my best friend. And, I'm just going to break it down and give you a few tips on what it is, what it does, and maybe some signs and symptoms. And I can share with you, welcome. I can share with you what we saw in my son. But again, autism is different for each child. So that's probably part of the problem is it's hard to explain it. But, I looked it up so it'd be easier to explain. All right. So it's a developmental disorder. So I will be looking down at notes so that I can explain it properly. It affects communication and behavior. Now I saw this in our son. So about 2.5. Well, let's go back. When he was 2, he was very good. He knew his, all his ABCs. He knew his numbers, shapes, all of that, and he was really good. He loved to sing songs. About 2.5, his words started to get a little muddled, so he started to regress, and he'd sing songs, and it was like all mumbly, confusing. So he started to regress at 2.5. It can be diagnosed at any age, but it is said to be a developmental disorder because symptoms usually appear in the first 2 years. So I'd say between 2 and 3. So people with autism spectrum disorder have difficulty with communication and interaction with other people. They have restricted interests and repetitive behaviors. And the symptoms that hurt these symptoms, they hurt the person's ability to function properly in school, work, and other areas of life. Now, we definitely, had some issues with communication, and there was a lot of repetitive behaviors in my son and very restricted interests, especially with his food. And so it impacted his ability to interact with us. All right. So it's known as a spectrum disorder because there's a wide variation. So, I've met so many people and everybody's child is different. But there are some common things that, like I can pick it up more easily. I can see I can see a child, I can see and I'm like, that's that person, I can pick it up. Because I recognize it, I live with it. So it's a lot easier for me to, they may not be, there's, like I said, on the spectrum means they have little bits here and there. So, but I can pick up bits of the spectrum on different people. I could go around and I'm like, yeah, that person. Just because I feel it, I know it, I could see it because I live with it. But explaining is a little harder. Okay, so it occurs throughout all groups, barriers, races, economic groups. It's everywhere, okay? It's not just boys. It's boys, girls, black, white, Asian. It's everybody's affected by it. And I thought this was interesting. I didn't know this, but the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that all children be screened for autism. It's becoming more of an issue, more and more children. The rate is a lot higher. And I know in the beginning I was a little nervous about doing that because you don't want your child to be labeled, right? And because with that label comes a lot of, I guess just negative feelings, concern and fear. But without that label, you can't get the help that you need. And I got to tell you, that label is a blessing. It opens the door. And the sooner even if you have you even wonder just a little bit, is your child autistic? Go get them checked. Because I can tell you that the services started helping right away. They are going to open your child's mind to learn the things. They're going to help you learn how to communicate with your child. I can't say enough about getting in as soon as you can. Don't be ashamed. Do it. Just do it. Obviously I'm looking back, but and we had to do it. It was just like, it was intense. It was really intense before we got help. And it still is sometimes, but it made such a big difference. All right, here are some signs that maybe your child has autism. They're difficult. They have difficulty with social communication and interaction, restricted interests, like I said, and repetitive behaviors. So making little or inconsistent eye contact. Now, I didn't notice that in Clark. I really didn't. Not until he was being tested. And the doctor testing him said that he wouldn't look at him. And I was like, oh. Because he was always really smiley and happy as a baby. And he always looked at us. I just didn't notice it. But I see it more with other people. I see it when he's at school. He just, he doesn't always look at them. So tending not to look at or listen to people. Now I see more of that now. Like Clark, we say, is your listener broken? Because he just he doesn't listen. A lot of times he just blocks it out. Rarely showing enjoyment of objects or activities by pointing or showing things to others. Now, my son didn't do that. He's better about that now through therapy. He's learned how to point, share, and talk about it. But he never, ever, ever pointed at something and said, Mom, I love this, whatever, look at this. Never. Okay, this is before therapy. By the time he was 3, he didn't point at anything. He didn't ask me to look at it. He didn't show excitement and want to bring it to me and share it with me. He didn't do that ever. And I didn't notice it until somebody pointed it out. And I was like, oh, yeah, he doesn't do that. All right, failing to or being slow to respond to someone calling their name or to other verbal attempts to gain attention. Now, I don't think I've seen that in Clark, but that may be someone else's, Having difficulties with the back and forth of conversation. This was a big thing. And only recently, and he's 5, only in this last 6 months maybe, have I seen huge leaps. And that's because of all the therapy and schooling we're doing. But it was just he just shares and talks whatever he wants to talk about. And you could talk to him. I would ask him every day, how was school? What did you do? And he never, I get emotional about this, he never shared. And what's really makes me emotional is he does now. And sometimes I have to ask specific questions. It helps, like at school, they say, ask your child about, because we're learning about Arctic foxes. And so I say, hey, did you learn about Arctic foxes? He gets all excited and then he starts to talk about it. But that was completely absent in our life. I would just talk to him. He would mumble whatever, or talk about something he was excited about, but it didn't have to do with what I asked. And so that back and forth conversation has been a big struggle, but this last 6 months to a year has increased tremendously. We have conversations. He shares more. It is so exciting. And we wouldn't be there had we not gotten help. All right. Often talking at length about a favorite subject, garbage trucks with my son, without noticing that others are not interested or without giving others a chance to respond. Now, we actually had this very thing happening last night. We were doing our family home evening lesson. And, he just pretty much talked over everybody. And we give him a chance to talk. And we say, okay, now it's someone else's turn. And he just would go on and on and on about what he wants to talk about. Doesn't care that nobody's listening. And he would just keep talking. And he doesn't pick up that you're not interested or that it's off topic, whatever. All right, so having facial expressions, movements, and gestures that do not match what is being said. Having an unusual tone of voice that may sound sing-song, flat, or robot-like. Having trouble understanding another person's point of view, or being unable to predict or understand other people's actions. So those are some of the things. Restrictive repetitive behaviors may include repeating certain behaviors or having unusual behaviors. For example, repeating words or phrases, a behavior called echolalia. Now my son has done that, still does it. But it was a big, early on, he would repeat things that we would say. Having lasting, intense interest in certain topics, such as numbers, details, or facts. He does perseverate, is what our person would always say. He picks something and he'll say it over and over and over and over again. And sometimes I get frustrated and I'll say it over and over again. Like he says, there's the fire truck, there's the fire truck. And he'll say, oh, there's the fire truck. He'll say it like 10 times. I'll be like, fire truck, fire truck, fire truck, fire truck. Trying to validate him because he wants me to validate what he's saying, but he doesn't stop saying it, and so he does that a lot. All right. Having overly focused interests such as with moving objects or parts of objects, getting upset by slight changes in routine. Now, this was a big thing for us. And it goes back now that I know, going back to when he was a baby. When of course, I didn't realize it back then, but as an infant, took him 3 weeks, I think, he screamed bloody murder in the car every time I took him in the car, every single time. And all my other babies loved it, fell asleep. But it sounded like someone was murdering him, and it was so traumatic. It was so hard for me. Everywhere we drove, he was loud. He'd scream so loud until I got him inside. As soon as we got inside, he was fine. I took him to the park once when he was less than a month old, and he flipped out. As soon as he like screamed the entire way back home. As soon as I got back home, calmed down. It's just like, he just had a really hard time with change. And something that happened in the beginning, I don't remember if it was right before we got him tested or right after, but we couldn't eat out. He would flip out, even though we'd been to this restaurant so many times. I guess he was just overwhelmed. I don't know, but he would scream in the restaurant, just scream. And so I took to staying home while Dad took the kids out to eat out with the rest of the family because he couldn't handle it. Now, that's changed. We've worked with a lot of things in exposure, and he loves to go out, and we don't have any problems with that anymore. But it was quite a while, and every now and then we still have meltdowns in public. But slight changes in routine can rock their world, and it can be very hard. Being more or less sensitive than other people to sensory input, such as light, noise, clothing, and temperature. They can also experience sleep problems and irritability. Thankfully, I do not have a lot of sleep problems with him. Irritability, he's usually happy, but he can be very irritable too. Although people can experience many challenges there, the positive thing is, therapy is essential, but there are some amazing things about people that are on the spectrum. Amazing. It's a gift. They have a gift with their brains that they're able to do something that we can't do, other people that are not on the spectrum. They're able to learn things in detail and remember information for long periods of time. Being strong in visual auditory learners, and they're excellent in math, science, music, or art. I can see Clark is so fascinated with music. He absolutely loves it. And so there are some amazing things. So while it can be turbulent, especially in the early years when you find out your child has autism and you find out that it's like a 40-hour-a-week job for school and therapy, it's crazy, but it's worth it. And each child is blessed with something. It is not a curse. Autism has blessed our lives. It is a challenge at times. It can be very hard trying to find ways to communicate and work with him and overcome issues, but he is such a beautiful, smart boy. And so, yes, I wanted to share that. That is kind of a basic overview of what autism is, kind of things you can look for. And if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me. I love to be of help. I'm extremely passionate about early intervention, even though I know how you feel because I was there. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to have to go through all this. But it makes a huge difference, and it is a tremendous blessing. And I was terrified to have to welcome people into my home 6 days a week, but I've made such amazing friends, and they really are angels, and they come and they help to support your family. And it has made a big difference in being able to communicate with him instead of having so many meltdowns. It has improved each year. And so, anyways, thanks for listening. I hope this was helpful. Again, if you have any questions at all, if you are in need of any kind of help or would like to pick my brain about autism, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to help. I've been there. It rocked my world. And it's very hard in the beginning. Very hard. But it does get better. All right. Love you all. Talk to you later.